Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Asphalian's webinar, practical session, how to set up your post-market surveillance and vigilance system for IVDs according to IVDR. Before starting, just a couple of things to take into consideration about the webinar. The webinar will last approximately 40 to 45 minutes. In case you have any questions as the webinar goes by, please submit them in the chat. We will answer them later by email. We will send you also the presentation after the webinar. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Laura Eder, Trike Safety Manager at Asphalian. Laura is biologist and biochemist by training and has a master in health administration and a PhD in biomedical research. After a period where she devoted to cancer research and to teaching general and human genetics at the University of Navarra, she then started her career in pharmacovigilance. She has experience both in the pharmaceutical industry and in the scientific consultancy. The objective of the webinar today is to provide you with tips and best practices to make sure the transition to IVDR runs as smooth as possible while complying with the new regulation. And now please meet my colleague Cindy for a short introduction about Asphalian. Cindy, please, whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much, Lydia, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Before my colleague Laura gets into the subject, I would like to briefly introduce you as Asphalian, even though many of you probably already knows us, but Asphalian is an international scientific regulatory affairs consultancy. We were founded more than 20 years ago, and our headquarters are located in Barcelona, even though that we have several offices in Madrid, in Munich, and London. So since 2000, our team has grown significantly, and currently we are more than 150 people in the team, and we have worked with more than 900 clients in over 4,000 projects, covering different regions around the world. So if we go to the next slide, here it's a global illustration about the services provided by Asphalian. We provide regulatory support throughout the life cycle of a variety of products, including drugs, generics, biologics, biosimilars, ATMPs, medical devices, and orphan drugs. And we provide support since the definition of regulatory and scientific strategy for development through the compilation and preparation of clinical, non-clinical, and quality documentation for registration of medicinal products and medical devices until global submissions, and of course support during the life cycle management and pharmacovigilance. So in today's webinar, we will be focusing in the vigilance area where Asphalian has wide experience. If we go to the next slide, since 2007, where we set up our own PV system for subcontracting purposes. Since then, we have collaborated with several clients that we are still working with, providing both full support for pharmacovigilance or specific support in specific activities. Currently, we are collaborating with more than 100 projects for over 60 customers. As you can see here a summary of activities that we can cover for medicinal products, including global and local literature activities, case management, signal detection, among other activities. But for medical devices specifically, we can also provide global support. Due to our experience in medicinal products, we can also provide support in the definition of post-market surveillance system, including the preparation of SOPs and PMS plans according to the new regulations. So other activities that, according to the new regulations, will be required for both medical devices and in vitro diagnostic could be incident management, complaint management, also literature monitoring and safety alerts monitoring. So now I'll give the floor to my colleague Laura. So you can, she can give you tips on how to properly set up this post-market surveillance according to the new regulation.
Thank you very much, Cindy, for this wonderful introduction. So now Laura will take it from here. Laura, please, whenever you are ready.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you very much, Lydia and Cindy, for this introduction. So now we start with the practical session. If you have, as Lydia said, if you have any question during the webinar, you can write the question in the chat and we will answer you after by email. So what are we going to talk about today? Okay, first, we are going to review the current legal framework and present the new regulation. Then we will take a little bit about the new classification rules of IVDs. Next, I want to introduce you to the field of post-marketing surveillance and the activities that are included in this system. And finally, we will finish this session applying in a case study all the concepts that we have learned. So, which is the new regulation? The new regulation is the one that you can see here, the in vitro medical device regulation from 2017. This regulation lays down rules concerning the placement on the market or putting into service of in vitro diagnostic medical devices for human use in the Union. This regulation also applies to performance studies concerning such in vitro diagnostic medical devices conducted in the Union. The in vitro diagnostic medical device regulation was adopted on 25th May 2017 and will replace the in vitro diagnostic medical device directive. There was a transition period of 5 years, making the regulation fully applicable today. One of the most important changes are those related to post-marketing surveillance, which is the scope of this webinar. Post-marketing surveillance, and in this context, post-marketing performance follow-up, has now a very important role under this new regulation. So, first of all, what is an in vitro diagnostic medical device? Well, IVDs means any medical device, which is a reagent, a calibrator, control material, or kit, whether used alone or in combination, intended to be used in vitro for the examination of human specimens, including blood or other tissues. Its purpose is to provide information, for instance, for a physiological or pathological process or states, congenital impairments, or predisposition to a disease. According to the new regulation, it introduced a risk-based classification system similar to the medical device regulation. Risk classes, as you can see here in this slide, runs from A to D, A being the lowest and D the highest risk class. Also, it's important you to know that Class B, C, and D products require the involvement of notified body. In addition, the application of the classification rules shall be governed by the intended purpose of the device. In this slide, I want to show you some examples of different classes of IVDs. Class A. Here we can find products for general laboratory use as buffer solution, washing solution, histological stains. In Class B, we can find devices for the detection of pregnancy, for fertility testing, or other devices for determining cholesterol levels, for instance. In Class C, we can find devices for blood grouping or to determine fetal-maternal blood grouping incompatibilities, or devices used in screening diagnosis of cancer, human genetic testings. And in Class D, we can find devices for the detection of the presence of exposure to a transmissible agent in blood, and also devices for determining the infectious load of a life-threatening disease. Post-marketing surveillance system. What is this? Well, according to the new regulation, for each device, manufacturers shall plan, establish, document, implement, maintain, and update a post-marketing surveillance system in a manner that is proportionate to the risk class and appropriate for the type of device. The system is divided in reactive action or vigilance system and proactive actions or PMS activities. Both need to be included in a PMS plan, which is part of the technical documentation of the device. It's important to know that the post-marketing surveillance plan should cover at least a proactive and systemic process to collect any safety information. Here, you can see some activities, including reactive actions and examples of proactive actions. And we are going to go through all of them during this first part of the webinar. So we start with the vigilance part, the reactive actions, specific the incidents. What is an incident? Well, an incident is any malfunction or deterioration in the characteristics or performance of a device made available on the market, including use errors due to economic features, as well as any inadequacy in the information supplied by the manufacturer, and also any harm as a consequence of a medical decision. A very important term is a serious incident. What is a serious incident? Well, it is an incident that directly or indirectly might lead to any of the following: the death of the patient, the temporary or permanent serious deterioration of patient's state of health, or a serious public health threat. So, manufacturers should have a system for recording and reporting incidents. Period of reporting. Well, as a general rule, the period of reporting should take into account the severity of the serious incident. Manufacturers should report any serious incident immediately after they have established a causal relationship between the incident and their device, or when the causal relationship is reasonably possible, and not later than 15 days after they become aware of the incident. In the event of death or anticipated serious deterioration in a person's state of health, the report should be provided immediately after the manufacturer has established or as soon as it suspects a causal relationship, but no later than 10 days after the date on which the manufacturer becomes aware of the serious incident. In the event of a serious public health threat, the report should be provided immediately and no later than 2 days after the manufacturers become aware of the threat. Another very important concept related to vigilance and incident is the field safety corrective action. The field safety corrective action means corrective actions taken by a manufacturer for technical or medical reasons to prevent or reduce the risk of a serious incident in relation to the IVD available on the market. When we are in a situation of a field safety corrective action, an immediate report to authorities is required even before the FCCA being undertaken. In addition, the manufacturer may provide periodic summary report following agreement with the competent authorities. Which action may include a FCCA? It can include return of our IVD, modification of the IVD, IVD replacement, destruction, adaptation by the user according to the manufacturer's instructions, manufacturer's recommendation regarding the use of the product. It's very important you to know that the field safety corrective action must apply in all countries where the affected in vitro medical device is on the market or is still in use. Besides, a FCCA goes hand in hand with a field safety notice. But what is a field safety notice? Okay. FSN means a communication sent by a manufacturer to users or customers in relation to a field safety corrective actions. The FCN needs to be prepared in the official union language or languages determined by the member states in which the field safety corrective action is taken. In addition, the content on the field safety notice should be consistent in all member states. Also, the field safety notice shall allow the correct identification of the device or devices involved. And the field safety notice shall explain in a clear manner the reasons for the field safety corrective action with reference to the device malfunction and associated risks for users, and shall clearly indicate all the actions to be taken by users. As the last reactive actions, we have the trend analysis and reporting. Okay, manufacturers should report any statistical significant increase in the frequency or severity of incidents that are non-serious incidents and that could have a significant impact on benefit risk analysis. So, non-serious incidents and complaints must be also monitored. But how can we detect a significant increase? Okay, evaluating the number of events in a certain interval and taking into account the volume of product placed on the market. The competent authorities will be informed of any statistical significant increase in the frequency and severity that produce a benefit risk profile change. Now, let's go to proactive actions. As I said before, post-marketing surveillance plan should cover at least a proactive and systemic process to collect any safety information. So we start with literature searches. Manufacturers should identify through a scientific literature review the available data relevant to the device and its intended purpose, and also identify any remaining undesirable issue or gap in the data. Which are the steps to follow to perform this activity? First, we have to establish a search methodology and a search protocol based on the known risks related to our IVD and its intended purpose and other uses. The source of information could be PubMed, Embase, and other local databases, and the frequency of the literature search and review depends on the known risk. The evaluation of the results will be included in a PMS report or PCR. Other very useful proactive action is to perform customer surveys because it allows to confirm the safety and performance of the device throughout its expected lifetime, as well as identify previously unknown risks and contraindication, and also identify and analyze emerging risks on the basis of factual evidence, or also identify possible systemic misuses. So, what should we take into account for the preparation of a customer survey? Who will be the receivers? How often will be to them? What information do we want to obtain? Incident uses. But it's very important to review the quality complaints, to establish a procedure, and to evaluate them because some of them can be related to safety. So we have to review and analyze feedbacks and complaints, and we have to think about if the results are as expected or if we need to carry out an improvement action. We continue with the review of the competent authorities' websites. This activity is very important to be able to analyze the public information available on similar medical devices. Which websites we need to review? Okay, we have to review the main authority websites and the website of the countries where our product is marketed. We have to set review frequency, and we have to analyze information related to incidents, alerts, and any problem with the use of the same type of products. To finish with the proactive actions, we have the safety reports. We have two types, PMS reports and PCR. Their elaboration depends on the IVD class established. So, as you can see in this slide, for class A and class B, we have to prepare post-marketing surveillance reports. The content of these reports are the results and conclusion of the PMS plan and also the description of any preventive and corrective actions taken. We have to prepare this type of reports when necessary, and they must be available to notify body and the competent authorities upon request. In case of Class C and Class D, what we have to prepare is PCRs. In these PSURs, we have to include a benefit risk assessment and also the main findings of the post-marketing performance follow-up. Also, we have to include volume of sales, size, and other characteristics of the population using the device, and where practicable, the usage frequency of the device. It's very important to you to know that the PSUR are part of the technical documentation. We have to prepare for Class C and Class D PSUR annually, and in case of Class C, manufacturers shall make PSUR available to the notified body involved in the conformity assessment and upon request to competent authorities. In case of Class D, manufacturers shall submit PSUR to notified body involved in the conformity assessment of such devices. The notified body shall review the report and add its evaluation. Such PSUR and the evaluation by the notified body shall be made available to competent authorities. So now let's go to our case study. We are going to apply all the knowledge that we have just gained, and we are going to create a post-marketing surveillance system. So this is our case study. We have a manufacturer of two different in vitro diagnostic medical devices, a pregnancy test, Class B, and a test for genetic disorders in an embryo or fetus, Class B. The manufacturer has a surveillance system adapted to the directive, and we must implement a new PMS system according to the new regulation. The products are only marketed in Italy and are distributed by a company with which they have a commercial agreement. So what should we do? Let's start. First of all, we must carry out an audit or a gap analysis to know the status of our post-marketing monitoring and surveillance system. So we are going to evaluate the different actions and the current status. The vigilance system of our manufacturer. Okay, our manufacturer has a vigilance SOP, but not a PMS SOP nor a PMS plan. So here we can identify a gap. Literature searches. Our manufacturer is not performing literature searches. So here we have a gap that we have to improve. Customer surveys, management of quality complaint. The marketing department carry out surveys at commercial level. That's good. And there is a quality complaint management SOP. That's okay. But please notice that we have to review these activities and adapt it to the new regulation. Safety reports. Our manufacturer is not performing this activity. Again, another gap. Management of agreement with third party. There is a commercial agreement with a distributor in Italy. That's okay. But again, we have to review it and adapt to the new regulation. And review of the INC website. This activity is not performing, so again, we have a gap. So the first gap identified was the absence of a PMS SOP and a PMS plan. So we have to elaborate them. According to the SOP, the purpose of the SOP will be to describe a post-marketing surveillance system according to the new regulation. The objective will be to be able to establish a system for the receipt, review, and evaluation of feedback information from the market. In addition, you have to take into account that the maintenance of the manufacturer's product PMS system can be outsourced to a partner through a vigilance agreement. In this case, remember, we have a distributor in Italy, so the responsibilities of both parties has to be clearly defined. And I explain this in the SOP. PMS plan. Okay, the PMS system described in the SOP shall be documented in a PMS plan. The PMS activities are planned for each IVD family. The plan shall be part of the technical documentation of the medical device, and it will be updated when necessary. As I said, PMS activities are planned for each IVD family, and they have to be reviewed. We recommend at least once a year as part of the quality system management review. The results will be included in an annual PMS report or PSUR. Here we can see an example of PMS plans for both IVDs of this case study. As you can see, the activities are similar in both, including the reactive and proactive activities that we have explained in the first part of the webinar. The differences are related First, to the frequency of revision. So, the pregnancy test is a class B with a lower risk. So we have decided to have a lower frequency. As you can see, for the pregnancy test, our manufacturer is going to perform trend analysis on a quarterly basis, while for the test of genetic disorder, which has a higher risk, on a monthly basis. The same for literature searches. For the pregnancy test, the activity will be annual, but for the test of genetic disorders, quarterly. Also, the review of the safety alerts, as you can see, will be performed every 6 months in case of the pregnancy test and quarterly for the test of genetic disorder. Other big difference is the safety reports. The pregnancy test needs a PMS report and the test for genetic disorders an annual PCR. So now we are going to analyze the Vigilance SOP. We already have a Vigilance SOP, that's perfect, but we must update it according to the new regulation. So which points should we define in the Vigilance SOP? First, we are going to focus on the management of incidents. And first, the reception and management. The first thing is that the reception and management of information on serious and non-serious incidents should be defined. First, we have to define our source of information. From where can we receive information? You must take into account that we can receive incidents from spontaneous reports from healthcare professionals, consumers, from studies, quality complaints, medical inquiries, scientific publications, surveys. We have also to establish a workflow with other departments and partners, and we have to define timelines to send information to the Vigilance Department. Also, we have to be aligned with the SDA that we have with our distributor in Italy. So at the end, as all employees or partners can be aware of any incident, we propose here to design an incident report form to collect all the information. Here in this slide, you have like an example. So once the incident is received in the Vigilance Department, what do we have to do? First, any incident received by the manufacturers will be coded and entered in a product safety validated database or the Excel tracker for its tracking. Then we have to define how we are going to evaluate the incident received. We have to define the seriousness criteria and be aligned with the regulation. For instance, we can decide to use an algorithm like card lasagna. Follow-ups. Regarding follow-ups, we have to define when it is necessary to follow up, how, and the responsibilities, of course, of the distributor on it. Also, situation in which the incidents should be notified has to be defined in the SOP, as well as timelines. And finally, as any employee can receive an incident, as well as the distributor, we have to describe in the SOP when and in which format the reconciliation of incidents with the distributor or other departments will be carried out. In this slide, I want to show you an example of a workflow. Imagine our manufacturer has a call center. So the call center can receive incidents. So the call center has to collect the initial information in the incident report form that we have designed and transfer the information in 24 hours to the Vigilance Department of the manufacturer. The distributor also can receive information, can receive incidents. So the distributor has to fill the incident report form and send in 24 hours to the Vigilance Department. The Vigilance Department is responsible for the registration and the management of the incident, and is also responsible for performing the follow-up if needed, and also notification of the notification of the incident to the regulatory authorities if needed. Other important thing that needs to be part of the vigilance system is the trend analysis. We need to be capable of detecting any significant increase in the rate of already reportable incidents and incidents that are usually exempt from reporting. Here, we can see an example of a formula for the calculation of the incremental determination of normally non-reportable incidents. So what do we have to do? Okay, this is the formula. So in this formula, I is the incidence of events, N represents the number of events, T represents an interval of time, D represents the volume of product placed on the market. And in this case, we have established that a significant increase will be considered to occur if incident triples compared to the previous time interval. For our products, according to our plan, we are going to perform the trend analysis on a quarterly basis for the pregnancy test because it has a lower risk, and on a monthly basis for the test of genetic disorders because the risk of this product is higher. In case of identifying a significant increase of or trend of events or incident, we have to report this to the national competent authorities. Here you can find a link to the guidelines of METES because here you can find a template of trend reports. Other very important point is the field safety corrective action. It is important to take into account that the vigilance system is intended to facilitate a direct, early, and harmonized implementation of field safety corrective action when required. It is very important to define which departments are responsible for performance the corrective action, and if we need the support of the distributor. If a field safety corrective action is required, we have to perform an investigation. The investigation will be based on all available information. For example, description of the incident, risk of occurrence, results of health hormone evaluation, batch number, and also the amount of product distributed. It's important you to know that the definition of field safety corrective action is used as a synonym of recall. But please notice that removals from the market for commercial non-safety related reasons are not included neither as field safety corrective action, nor it has to be performed through a field safety corrective action. Here you have again also another link for the guidelines in MEDES related to the notification of field safety corrective action, a field safety notice. We move now to proactive actions, which are included in the PMS SOP. Remember, and in specific to literature searches. Remember that this was a gap in our system that we had to develop. So, which are the steps to follow? First, we have to define the search strategy according to the risk, indication, and uses. The frequency will be based on the risk of the product, and who will be the responsible person for the literature searches? Well, the manufacturers, of course, but the distributor can support local searches according to the FDA. So, into our plan, for our pregnancy test, we are going to perform literature searches on an annual basis. And for our test for genetic disorder, we are going to perform this activity on a quarterly basis. Here, I include an example of keywords that we can use for the searches. In this case, we have decided to include the name of the device and the indication for which it is approved. It may also include additional terms such adverse reaction, adverse events, adverse effects, with the aim of reducing the search results to those of relevance to the vigilance of the in vitro medical devices. Also, we can apply some filters like humans. We have also to establish an inclusion criteria. In this case, we are going to select articles in which the use of the product is according to its approved indication. Also, article mentioning the use of the products in an approved indication with a successful result, and any article with safety information. And it's very important to track all the results in a tracker. Other common and very useful proactive action is the activity of receiving feedback feedback from users through customer surveys. If we are going to develop a survey, what do we have to take into account? First, do we already have a template? Which content does it have? Is it appropriate for our purpose? Okay, according to our case study, there is already a survey in the marketing department, but we need to adapt it to include safety and efficacy questions. And also this activity has to be included in the PMS SOP. Then, how are the results received? How are the results evaluated? We need to establish a reconciliation process. So now, focus on our study case. For our pregnancy test and for the test for genetic disorder, the customer surveys are going to perform on an annual basis. Which is the purpose? The purpose is to collect information on possible incident, functioning, contraindications, interactions, misuses, such as any comment that allow to improve the product. Who are the surveys for? Okay, our pregnancy test, we think that it's better to send our survey, for instance, to sex education, women care nurses, gynecologists, and primary care. But in case of the test of genetic disorders, maybe the surveys is good to send it to gynecologists, clinical genetic analysis laboratories, and also fertility clinics. To finish, please notice that the results will be reviewed and analyzed to determine their inclusion in the annual reports and the impact on the PMS plan. Okay, we move to quality complaints. We know that there is already SOP where it is described how to handle quality complaint. But we have to cross-reference this SOP with the PMS SOP. In addition, we need to establish periodic reconciliation with quality. The frequency will depend on the risk of the product and the number of complaints received. It's important you to take into account that all product complaints recalls received and how many of these have been detected related to safety needs to be evaluated. Again, I want to show you here an example of a workflow. As you can see, our manufacturer has a call center and also a contract with a distributor. So both can receive product complaints, incident, and product complaints plus incident. Call center and distributor has to collect the information in the incident report form and transfer the information in 24 hours to the Vigilance department and also to the QA department, because the QA department is who is going to perform the investigation of the defect, and the Vigilance department is going to manage the incident. As you can see here, there is a communication flow between the Vigilance department and the QA department. The Vigilance department will be the responsible person or responsible department for performing follow-up if needed, and also for communicating the investigation results to the customers. Also, the Vigilance department will notify the incident if needed to regulatory authorities. Okay, we move to safety reports. Do we have a SOP? That is not SOP. So we have to include this activity in the PMS SOP or elaborate a specific SOP. What information we need to include here? How we are going to manage the information, the departments involved, delivery deadlines, everything according to the new regulation and product risk. What kind of report do we have to prepare? The frequency. Do we need to submit this to the competent authorities? Okay, according to our pregnancy test, it has a lower risk and we have to prepare a PMS report. The frequencies were necessary according to regulation and we have to decide to prepare an annual one. According to our test of genetic disorders, a class C with a higher risk. And for this, according to the regulation, we have to prepare an annual PSUR. Please don't forget that the PSUR is part of the technical documentation. The website of the competent agency needs to be checked for safety alerts, new risk, and public information on similar medical devices. Which will be our frequency review? Well, we have to define this. we have to establish a website review frequency to keep up to date with any legislative change, security problem, or alert. According to our plan for our pregnancy test, we are going to perform this activity every 6 months and for the test of genetic disorders on a quarterly basis. In what websites are we going to perform the review? On the main websites, EMA and the FDA, and where it's market, in this case, in the Agency of Italy. Other very important point is the post-marketing performance follow-up. What is post-marketing performance follow-up? Well, a post-marketing performance follow-up should be understood to be a continuous process that updates the performance evaluation of our IVD. When conducting a post-marketing performance follow-up, the manufacturers should proactively collect and evaluate performance and relevant scientific data from the use of the device. So first, we need the post-marketing performance follow-up plan. Which are its objectives? For what we need a PMPF plan? We need it to confirm safety and performance of the device throughout its expected lifetime, to identify previous unknown risks, to identify emergent risks, to ensure the continuous acceptability of the clinical evidence and of the benefit-risk ratio, and to identify possible systemic misuses. Will the PMPF plan include? Well, it must include general methods and procedures for gathering of clinical experience gain, feedback from users, screening of scientific literature, doing trials, epidemiological studies, and so on. So, once we have the plan, the manufacturers will perform the corresponding activities, analyze the findings, and document the results in a report. The conclusions of the PMPF evaluation report should be taken into account in the risk management, and it's part of the technical documentation. If through the post-marketing performance follow-up, the need for preventive and corrective measures has been identified, the manufacturer should implement them. Nevertheless, in some situations, the post-marketing performance follow-up report is not considered needed, but then a justification should be provided. And this will depend on the safety profile of our IVD. So here, I saw the decision of our manufacturer according to our case study. Our pregnancy test has a low risk, so we decided to prepare a justification not to perform a post-marketing performance follow-up. But for the test genetic disorder, as is a class C, we prefer to perform a report. So here, I show you examples of reasons to justify not to have a post-marketing performance follow-up. For instance, our EVD has more than 10 years on market with no changes in its benefit-risk analysis to date. Other reason, the EVD has a well-characterized safety profile, or all the proposed activities are currently covered in the PMS plan. We finished this case study now looking at the SDI that we have with our distributor. So it's very important to review the agreements with the third-party companies to align them with the new regulation, new activities, and responsibilities. We have to establish all the responsibilities as manufacturers and as distributors. All activities of the PMS system must be clear. And to finish, as a recommendation, we think that it's very good to have different SDAs template depending on the type of agreement. So we finish here. Thank you very much for coming to this session. I hope that after this webinar, you have a clearer idea of the steps to follow to create a PMS system. Please feel free to send any question to this email address. We will be happy to help you in everything that is necessary for you to have a system totally adapt to the new regulation. So thank you very much for for coming.
So it's a wrap. Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you to all the attendees. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. We will send the presentation shortly, and remember that if you have further questions, you can send them here to farmacovigilancia@asphalian.com. See you. Bye-bye.